Good afternoon and welcome to today's Competitive Advantage webinar on the subject of specifier engagement. The webinar will be recorded and you'll be sent a link in the next day so that you can view it again later. Everyone is on mute. If you have any questions, please use the questions option and we will go through those at the end of the webinar. My name is Chris Ashworth. I'm founder of Competitive Advantage. Competitive Advantage conducts market research, delivers training and development, and also consultancy, helping people implement their programs. And we have a high level of expertise in the process of selling to specifiers, all the stages of that. My experience was first half of my career, I worked for building product manufacturers in both marketing and sales roles, and for the second half have been running Competitive Advantage. I'm joined today by my colleague Julie Crowsdale. Julie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello, welcome everybody. Yes, my name is Julie Crowsdale. I'm an associate of Competitive Advantage and have been for about 5 years. Prior to that, I worked for 18 years in the electrical and telecommunications industry within marketing roles. Since joining Competitive Advantage, I work with clients developing their marketing and specification strategies, and I also deliver training in these areas. That's me. So to start us off, I'm going to look at the specifier journey, which is the journey from a specifier becoming aware of your product, right way through the evaluation of that product, hopefully the specification, and then the purchase. And it's important to understand where the specifiers, when they do specify. So across the top here, we've got the REBA plan of work model, but don't worry, we're going to go into a bit more detail with that with Chris later. But it's important to understand when your specifiers are actually making their decisions, because if you approach them too soon, they're not going to be receptive to your messages. If you go too late, the specifications will already be written. So first of all, I'm going to look at awareness and look at some of the types of activities and materials specifiers look at in these early stages. So to try and understand where they are going to move forward. So first of all, thanks for moving that forward, Chris. We asked our audience where they would get product ideas from. And I think it's worth mentioning is that Competitive Advantage work with industry sponsors to undertake a construction media index every other year. So the last one we did was end of 2021 into 2022. And the slides I'm going to show going forward are taken from that research. And here, as Chris has put forward, it's showing a consolidated result. And that is because we asked different groups of specifiers. So we asked architects, we asked contractors, we asked house builders and M&E consultants. And what you're seeing here is the combined result. So it's very clear the place they start off these searches is on online search engines. So Google and other online search engines is where they start their search for product information. And very quickly, they end up at the manufacturer's website. If we can see here, 93% of respondents say they use the manufacturer's website as the first choice or regularly use it to find out about product information. Quickly followed by more engagement with manufacturers. So they either email a manufacturer or phone the manufacturer. So it's very clear that manufacturers are seen as the best providers of information about their own products. And as such, within a communications plan, it is important that is addressed. Next. Moving on, for those of you that deal with magazines in terms of advertising and editorial, you'll be pleased to see that our respondents said that they did on the whole read industry magazines and journals. So 71% of respondents did read these, with only 29% not doing. But over time, we are seeing a change in the formats they are accessing this information. Prior to COVID, the construction industry was always quite heavily, not necessarily criticised, but observed that we were behind in these things in the production of digital and online news. However, now, so this is from the last survey, 26% of readers only accessed the hard copy, with the others being a blended approach. So 39% of respondents accessed digital or online, and 36% accessed a blend. So they read the magazine and accessed digital or online. And when we say digital or online, that is the mix of that PDFs, flipbooks, and the websites. So it's good for when you're dealing with these magazines and evaluating what is your requirements when booking your communications. Next, please. Publication readership, well, unsurprising, I guess, that the publications of the professional bodies tend to have the highest readerships. You know, they write publications for the members that are issued free to members, and the databases are very good. So they know where they're sending them and they have the up-to-date email addresses. So readership is relatively high. Hard copy publications in general are in decline, and we're seeing that from this research to our previous research, but that's probably not a surprise to any of you. And the readership of digital platforms may have plateaued, but we won't be able to confirm that until we run the next research in a year or so's time. So as regard the non-professional body magazines, there's two that are enjoying good readership across the whole specifier arena, and they are Construction News and Building. So there may be something to consider. Next, please. Moving towards exhibitions and conferences. Well, I think it's fair to say when we ran the research, we were in the tail end of the pandemic. And as such, there was still a lot of online activity going on. So we asked the specifiers, would they continue to attend online conferences after the pandemic had ended? And 63% at that time thought they would, with 37% saying they wouldn't. We also asked about their attendance face-to-face, and 53% thought they would go back to face-to-face exhibitions and meetings, with only 47% saying no. Now, this is a tricky one because this was what was found during the back end of the pandemic, and as we know, in 2022, as things went back to the sort of more normal, the exhibitions were slightly different in terms of the attendance was obviously rolled over from bookings from pre-pandemic, and it's not yet truly representative of where it's going to settle, as opposed to are people going to go to these shows. And 2023 will be a real leveler of that. So you will see probably by the end of 23 that what is going to be the industry norm. And we've got a couple of big shows coming up in the industry. We've got Future Build in a couple of weeks. That might be interesting to observe how well that is attended. So exhibitions and conferences is one to watch, really, I think. Next, please. So product directories. These are an area that we've split out here, actually. We're showing architect use on this one. So architects say their most popular product directory they go to is NBS Source. And NBS Source was renamed, actually as the evolution, not just a rebadge, from Reba Product Selector. And that launched in 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic. So that one has only been going a couple of years. And the second one that they are most used is Barber Product Search, with very similar results. The other three that all run much of a muchness are those middle three. So BD Product Search, IHS TI One Stop, and Green Book Live all have similar usage levels from architects. However, it's not the same for M&E consulting engineers, so that's why we've split it out. Here, the most popular product directory is Barber Product Search, followed again with the Green Book Live and the IHS TI One Stop, so they've still got a reasonable amount of usage. However, for this particular set of specifiers, NBS Source isn't the place they seem to go. And moving on to look at further information on NBS source, we may be able to see why. I think it's fair to say that NBS is one of the most significant channels to consider when engaging with specifiers. Here we are seeing their audience as defined by themselves. So the 51, just over half of their users are architects working architecture and planning. And as we saw from the previous slide with the M&E consultants, only 12.8% are engineers. So it is a different mix within NBS source. And also NBS source, as I've already mentioned, is the evolution of REBA product selector. And REBA product selector was very much a static information source. So you uploaded, you provided NBS with your data sheets or Word documents, and they created a very static page. And the difference now with NBS source is it's a fully searchable database, which is a real evolution on data. And what this database does is feed NBS Chorus, and NBS Chorus is the cloud-based specification software. So cloud-based specification software was already growing before the pandemic, but the use of it was really forced through by this need for architects and the project team in general to carry on working from home. And the cloud-based software allowed that to happen. And how these two interlink is that Chorus, you can search for a product in Chorus, and you're searching essentially the source database. And if you find a suitable solution, you as the architect can download the product directly into your specifications. There's been a few evolutions in the last couple of years. Both sides, NBS Source and NBS Chorus, are trying to evolve their offering to make it suitable for a wider audience. Cost obviously was quite a key part for NBS Chorus because it's expensive software, and at the time, at the start, it was used more the larger architectural practices, and they've been working to change their offering to make it more suitable for smaller works. They take out some functionality and become more competitive on price. And NBS Source is moving to offer you product manufacturers more features and benefits in being able to offer BIM model, the opportunity to do your BIM models, and also be able to see where your products are being specified. So if it's been downloaded into a specification, you can see that as well, which always helps with the justifying the expenditure. So that's just a mention on that channel because it has been evolving a lot in the last couple of years. Moving forward, as I touched on earlier, the manufacturer's website is still seen as the key place for product information and the first point of contact, and is going to be fundamental in any communications plan that you have, I guess. If you have a wide range of products, i.e. specification products and non-specification products, it could be worth helping specifiers to navigate that by setting out a dedicated section for specification. And that helps identify with a specifier that you understand their needs, because even where at this stage I'm talking about awareness, but if the specifier comes onto your site and sees a product and it's just very top level product information, they need to be able to see that you can back that up and understand their needs. So for example, they would be looking at your availability of third-party certifications on there to download, more technical information, your BIM models, your specifications, your links to your technical team, contact information, all that sort of stuff. Even though they were in an awareness phase, they would be expecting to see that because that's the sort of information they need if they actually go on to specify, and including installation instructions and maintenance, all that sort of thing. So it's just something to consider when working out your navigation structures or your websites. Blogs are another area that are really useful in driving traffic to your websites and demonstrating you as a trusted advisor to specifiers. And it's important to write content within your experience. So, you know, there might be a trend going on that you want to talk about, but you're not best placed. It might be better to partner than try and not do it quite right. But generally, writing blogs that address the pain points and challenges of specifiers demonstrate that you understand their problems, you can be a solution to their problems, and you can be a trusted advisor in this area. Especially next point, I talk about existing and new trends. You know, if it's architectural products or design-led products, there's always something to talk about. You know, it's something to talk about and engage with specifiers about. And if you can write about those sort of aspects, they're probably going to be of interest, as well as obviously things to do with technical changes, updates in standards, that sort of thing, where they need to understand that detail. But overall, I'd recommend, you know, accuracy, being objective, showing your knowledge, demonstrate your trusted advisor status is more important, and as is a call to action to take them to your website to find that all important product information. Moving on to search engine optimization. I'm sure you're all familiar with this one if you've got any involvement with your websites. But as we've said, that the website is so key. If you've got a new product or you want to go into a new market, you won't necessarily have got the organic search optimization underway. So maybe you have to look at advertising, you know, sponsoring, or, you know, moving yourself up the rankings, whilst you understand a little bit more about your keywords and phrases. So it's really important that you understand how specifiers describe and look for your content and your products in particular, and try and build that in when you're looking at your search engine optimization. And then any content that you create, trying to make it relevant, easy to read and understand and locate, is not only useful for the specifier, but obviously for the chat, the Google bots. The Google bots do look for content that is easy to read, believe it or not, and understand. Specifiers require technical information to be up to date and current. So again, if you have a lot of technical information on your website, it's not just good enough that it's there. You need to try and review it regularly. And also that works again from the SEO, because the Google bots also identify when content is amended and updated and favors up-to-date information. And internal and external links, again, is all about that journey through the website. You know, when they finish reading something, a specifier has finished reading something, where are they going next? Are you making them taking them on a journey further down into the website, or do you want to take them out to external links to like trade bodies or something like that to find out more about the subject? But all these things need to be thought out just in general, but also help with the Google rankings. Moving forward, one of our key, we advocate this tool a lot, is CPD. And here we're showing architect CPD preferences. We've split it out again. And we asked this group, why did they attend CPD? And 61% came back to say to learn something new. 56% was to get their CPD hours. And as we know, REBA approved architects do need to do 35 hours of CPD a year. And 48% said because it relates to a project I'm working on. So when we're talking about that first stage, awareness, CPD answers that. You know, they want to learn about something new and it's on a project they're currently thinking of working on. So it does tick a box there. The formats they're accessing these CPDs on has changed. Prior to COVID, it was very much the lunch and learn type format. Whether it was done at lunch is another matter, but generally the 45-minute seminar with a question and answer session, normally at the premises of the architect. Time has moved on, and as we can see here, things have changed. So now it's pretty evenly split. So 23% now only want the face-to-face at their offices. 26% want it at an organised event, which could be an exhibition or a dedicated roadshow, I guess. 23% want a live presentation online like we're doing now. And 28% prefer the recorded. Now, the recorded offers that 24/7 access, which is convenient for the architect. However, what's encouraging here for manufacturers is that 3/4 of these allow the manufacturer to interact. So it's a live session, which offers all those advantages of CPD to a manufacturer. So being able to talk about projects, being able to build relationships, and be able to engage face to face in real time with specifiers and become the trusted advisor. So that's pretty, I think, good. I'll say good. It's a good result for that, I think. Moving forward, we're looking at awareness again, but this is also looking at preferred ways of doing CPD, but this time this is REBA. REBA asked their members their preferred ways of doing CPD. So it aligns with the other research on the slide before. You know, on-demand webinars are important, live webinars are important, workplace events, which are the in practice lunch and learn type things. But what's encouraging here, or food for thought, is that there's a whole host of other types of CPD you as a manufacturer can offer. So printed CPD, for example, can be white papers or technical brochures, videos, which I guess is of manufacturing or install or looking at a particular aspect of its design. Site or factory visits have always been around, but are still quite important. Podcasts are emerging, as are other roadshow type events. So if CPD was something that wasn't in your agenda before because your product range may not have been suited to that seminar format, what is encouraging is that there's other formats open to you which could be used to achieve that awareness status. So I think I'm going to move forward and hand on to Chris now for the next stage, which is evaluation.
Thank you, Julie. So we've covered the challenge of making the specifier aware of your products and brand. Having moved on to that, they now know about it, but they have to become to decide if it's actually something they want to use. And that's not only about the performance of the product, it's also about their confidence in your organization to support them and provide them with information. And here we see again from the Construction Media Index, sources of technical information and advice. And clearly the website is very, very important. So that's a starting point. Specifiers are going to want to find everything they need there. So you need to make it easy to navigate and comprehensive in terms of its information. It's interesting to notice the role of building control in keeping people informed as well. And in previous editions of the Construction Media Index, they did not come up. Maybe that's because of the recent changes in regulations, the impact of the Building Safety Act. But what I would add as an aside to that is in terms of using CPDs and keeping people informed, you shouldn't forget the building control officers who are important influencers. And as was the case earlier on, engagement with the manufacturer in the different forms is important. It's worth mentioning again that this research was conducted during COVID in its finishing stages, and so phone contact is higher than personal meetings. I would expect if we were to run that research today, the balance would change slightly, but again, a bit like events, it's not quite clear yet how things are going to settle down as we adapt to the new ways of working. So in terms of evaluation, a very important element is the case study. And we touched on earlier on the trusted advisor. The trusted advisor is what you want your organization to be seen as, and also your individual people. And part of that is about offering solutions, meeting deadlines, and having technical knowledge. So what I would suggest is when writing case studies, part of your checklist should be to include this. And ideally with third-party quotes, such as the architect or the contractor making comments about your organization and how easy they were to work with. Again, an important part of the case study is that the specifier can see the product in application. They can actually grasp how it's worked and how it's functioning. And as I've just mentioned, third-party testimonials are very important. So technical advice, In the early stages, there was probably some technical input required, but as we get to the design stage, it becomes much more important for them to get support. Now, that might be in the form of online chats, it might be phoning your technical department, it might be visits from members of your sales team, but whatever, it needs to provide easy access for the specifier and be comprehensive in terms of the information that's available. And again, I touched on this a minute ago, they need to be reassured. If they're changing from the product they've traditionally used to a different one, they're taking a big risk. If it goes wrong, the consequences will be resting on their shoulders. So they need to be confident that your organization can support them in this changeover. And of course, key to that are providing them with product specifications that they can use in Word document format typically, which can then be cut and pasted into their detailing, and increasingly BIM objects to allow the design. And what we mustn't forget as well when technical inquiries come through is it's an opportunity to firstly identify projects and also cross-sell other products. And I know from my own experience of working as a support role to a technical department, and by that I mean when I was a product manager, if the technical department's lines were all busy, they'd bounce the inquiries through to the marketing team. And when you're under pressure, you tend to focus on just answering the question that the inquirers tabled. However, it's important to remember that this is the opportunity to find out about perhaps a project that your organization doesn't know about, or to tie together loose ends and follow it through, and also to find out whether other product opportunities there might be at the same time. Samples, again, another important sales tool, and obviously I appreciate it depends whether we're talking about decorative products such as those on the image here, or whether it's a turnstile for entrance into an office system, for example, which you can't very well send along as a sample. But ideally, specifiers want to get a look and feel of these things. They may well want to be sharing some of these items with clients so that the client can see what they're proposing. And if it's a matter of a sales meeting, then by having samples, it can make that meeting much more memorable. However, it also has another important role, and that is a buying signal. Specifiers are not going to request samples unless they're thinking seriously about your product. So you can assume that if a sample request comes through, it's elevated to the next stage. And then now it might not be exclusively your product, but they're seriously considering your product as the solution for this project. And increasingly, it's important to offer to recycle products. That's obviously about being sustainable, reducing cost, but it's also another opportunity to re-engage with the specifier. If you're offered to collect samples, when going to collect them or being asked to collect them, there's the opportunity to ask, is the product being used on the project? If not, to find out why not, and maybe try and rescue things and recover the opportunity for your product. We talked about social networks earlier on, or touched on them really in the awareness stage. They are important. This is consolidated data on the use of social networks. And as you can see, 48% of decision makers view them daily, and only 7% are looking at them less than once a week, with 21% never using them. So they are a significant means of communication. So if we just look at a few examples, I think in the business environment, LinkedIn is the most important of the social networks. As you can see here, 65% say that they use it to stay informed. And very often it'll be either a particular group where information is published or requesting information, things of that nature. So it's important to be not pumping out sales information through LinkedIn, but be monitoring and picking up when specifiers have inquiries or questions around your type of product to give you an opportunity to step in and perhaps provide a link through to a blog article, something of that nature. WhatsApp, that's actually very widely used by specifiers, but a lot of that I think is to communicate with the project team. And probably for smaller projects where there isn't sophisticated project software available, it's WhatsApp that's being used to share that information. But it is also seen as a channel which has a high level of trust. So I would suggest as a manufacturer, you might give thought to how you might use WhatsApp to engage with specifiers. For architects, Pinterest is more widely used than it is for other specifiers and decision makers. And clearly it's the photographic element of it, the opportunity to see images, get inspiration. And so again, an important place to have a presence. Facebook, when we ask specifiers, or not only specifiers, decision makers, it's Facebook's role, as you see here, 81% say for personal use only. So it's not the main channel. However, I would suggest that there's an element of, shall we call it, passive engagement, because maybe an architect who has recently completed a project will post an image of it, make some comments about it, and again, there's the chance to get wrapped up into that. So information is being shared. Moving on to the specification stage, which is the key point after evaluation. And let's just look at the REBA plan of works for a minute. So Julie mentioned it earlier on. This has been established since the 1960s. The most recent edition was 2020, and it's been subject to a number of updates to incorporate such things as sustainability and also modern methods of manufacture. The various stages are shown here, and again, extracting a bit from the more detailed plan of works that REBA published, this is the list of information exchange. And just to highlight on concept design, stage 2, that's where the outline specification is being developed, and so there's likely to be some requirement for information there. Then at the spatial coordination stage, it's updating that specification, getting it tightened down a bit more. And then finally, at the technical design stage, they come with the final specification. So in terms of engagement with the specifier, whether that be architect or engineer, it's not a one-off thing. It's a process of initially providing them with information and then following up during those different stages to make sure, A, that it's still your product that's being used, and B, that they have all the information they require. And that information is going to come via product literature, that's the catalogues, and the technical data sheets. And increasingly, specifiers are wanting more evidence to support the claims that manufacturers make. That's a consequence of the Building Safety Act, where there's the requirement to ensure that the correct products are being used. And of course, that means tests and certification are going to be very important. British Board of Agreement is an example of some of the independent testing to demonstrate the suitability of products. And something that I think is proving a bit of a headache for all manufacturers at the moment is the transition from CE marking to UKCA marking. And as I'm sure you're aware, this was originally expected to be enforced by now, but the challenge is that there aren't sufficient testing organisations to allow everything to be updated. So the government has agreed to extend the acceptability of CE marketing until the 30th of June 2025. So it does give us a breather, but it doesn't mean that it's gone away, and it's still something that's going to have to be considered. So the product specification itself, we touched on it a couple of times. BIM objects are increasingly important. I think it's fair to say that for medium and large projects, BIM is pretty much the default setting now as far as the design and construction is concerned. It's less prevalent with the smaller projects and house building in particular. So other support information that's going to be required are drawings to help with detailing and the written specification, both in proprietary and performance form. So without going into too much detail here, while many specifiers will choose to use proprietary, that is naming a brand, they invariably put or equivalent with it to give alternatives. And so it's important that they have a specification, which is effectively a performance specification within that brand specification. Because if there's the debate about what is equivalent, you need to define the key performance criteria that would make another product equivalent to your own. And again, particularly with design and build, it will be a performance specification that the specifier will use, and then the final product choice is left to the subcontractor. So again, the important point is to have all the key characteristics of your product included in that specification to ensure that the subcontractor is guided in the right direction. And then finally, we come to the purchase stage. And of course, this is where the specification is most likely to be switched. The subcontractor, for whatever reason, is not happy with the originally proposed product, and they will look for alternatives. And invariably, the key reasons used for that are going to be a lack of availability. So it's important within the whole process to be monitoring this stage, making sure that the subcontractor can get competitive prices when they're initially bidding, and that once they're awarded the job, that they are able to access those products and are not proposing to change specs. Now, obviously, one of the reasons they will change spec is if they can't get the product, but it's also perhaps lack of familiarity with the product. And again, if it's a new product that's being introduced, that's likely to be a barrier. So it's also important to provide technical support for the installer. Now, that might be early days when the proposal is being put together and the estimators need some information, but it's also further on down the line when we're on site. And that's where installation guidance could be important. So it's about setting up training, lunch and learn, toolbox sessions on the construction site, for example, to make sure that the people installing the product are comfortable with it and there's less of an objection or less of a barrier to using your product. And of course, availability. We have the distributors who tend to be specialists in particular areas and carry a broad range of products for that type of application. And then we have the stockists and merchants and wholesalers who are offering all manner of different materials. So they basically will run from siteware to tools through to the various different products. And of course, they tend to stock only one brand of each element. So it's again important to make sure it's your brand that they're stocking. If they don't have it in stock and the installer is insisting on it, then it's generally the distributors that will act as an intermediary and supply that material to them. So very important to maintain the links there and ensure that the subcontractors know where stock is available. So to summarize, we have the different stages of the specifier engagement. The early stage is awareness, where we've got product directories, exhibitions, CPD seminars, creating that initial awareness. Then SEO may be leading to your website as a result of blog posts and perhaps pay-per-click. We then move through to the evaluation stage where there'll start to be some kind of correspondence with the product manufacturer, and social media may be used as a way of getting independent third-party comments on the material, but case studies, including testimonials, are going to be very important. We then reach the specification stage. Increasingly, sustainability is an issue here, and they'll be looking for your credentials to support that. And then the other product credentials, depending on what your products do, that might be related to fire, acoustics, thermal insulation, and a number of other things. And of course, there's the product literature and technical data sheets that go with that. And then finally, we get to the purchase stage where initially there's going to be the need for technical support. We've got to ensure that product is available and delivered when it's required. And then there's the installation guidance to ensure that people know how to install products correctly. I talked about the construction, or both of us talked about information from the Construction Media Index. That's available to purchase on our website, and we'll send you a link with the follow-up to this webinar. In terms of what Competitive Advantage can do to help you, we conduct construction research so we can help you better understand your customers, their attitudes perhaps to your competitors' products, and their satisfaction with your own products, amongst other things. We undertake training and development to help your sales and marketing teams better understand the processes we've given this brief coverage to, and we can help you to implement your strategy and tactics. And in particular CPD, which is where we do quite a lot of work, helping people to review their CPD seminars and turn them into an effective sales tool, while at the same time not being blatant in that approach. Our next webinar will be on the subject of using telephone conversations with specifiers to educate and inform. And this will mark a change from the theory of today's webinar to a series we're lining up, which are much more practical, giving case study examples of how you can do some of these things. So that will be on the 5th of April. And again, we'll give you details when we send out the link to download and view this webinar. So I'll thank you for your time today. Thank you, Julie, for your contribution, and I'll say thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.